On the Sherry Lord Talk Show podcast. Start your day off with a higher vibrational podcast with weekly guests covering spirituality, healthy foods, and so much more. Go to sherrylord.com for more info. Yay! Welcome, everybody. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. This is a very special week. It's the Lionsgate portal this week, so there's a lot of energy happening. There's a lot going on, so you really want to be grounded during this time and just soak it all up. You know, a lot of changes happening for everybody. And we also have a very special guest, and in our heart, we're so happy she can join us, and it's Katherine Skaggs. She is an award-winning author and is an intuitive, visionary artist, award-winning author, a painter of souls, mystic teacher, and shamanic practitioner. Katherine acts as a soul guide to many, a diviner of sacred imagery, and a teacher of the sacred with 35 plus years experience in the esoteric, esoteric arts as teacher and energy worker, and a lifetime as an artist. Katherine brings an interesting and uplifting perspective to living life in a greater harmony and wisdom and love. Katherine is an artist, author of multi-award winning books. Cover book of the year 2022, Artist Shaman Healer Sage, Timeless Wisdom, Practices, Rituals, and Ceremony to Transform Your Life and Awaken Your Soul. And thank you, Katherine, for joining us. We are so happy to have you. And we want to let everybody know the topic for today is sacred art, wisdom from the divine to navigate our modern times. And we are so happy to have her. Thank you so much. And we're also scrolling her information on the bottom. Welcome, and thank you for joining us, Katherine. We're so happy to have you.
Oh, Sherry, thank you so much for having me on today. It's a delight. I can't wait to dive in with you and with all your people. It's wonderful.
Oh, this is exciting to have you and all the gifts that you here to share with everyone. Can you share a little bit about your path? And then we'll go right into the topic.
You bet. So I've been an artist ever since I can remember. I've got pictures of me at 3 years of age drawing, which is kind of like back in a long time ago, right? But I've been doing art for a long time, and always wondered what it'd be like to be out in the world doing my art. But as many artists have been kind of dissed, you know, many of us have been squashed and saying, well, you're a great artist, but what are you really going to do? I heard that growing up. So I had many interests, and I got another degree, my first degree in my 20s in health and education, and always doing my art though. So in my mid 20s, I remember talking to my boyfriend and saying, you know, I wonder what it would be like if I just went to art school for 1 year, because I was always doing it. And he said something I'm going to encourage to everyone else. Why not?
Oh, good for you.
So in 18 months, I was at Kansas City Art Institute, and I stayed 3 years, and I got my degree in painting. And then during that time, I was also exploring my spirituality, which was the gift, because I was diving into dreams and metaphysics and all of that, and yet I'm doing my art, and I'm starting to have some pretty profound dreams during that time period. And I moved back to Oklahoma, which I swore I'd never do. That's where I grew up. And during that time period, I actually started working a regular job because I didn't know what else to do with my art. I was bartending and doing my art at night. And I thought, well, this is kind of dead end. My friends are getting houses and buying things, and I'm like the starving artist over here. And I thought, okay, I can do something else. But the cool thing is that because of the spiritual things I was diving into, I started to get really curious about how the mind worked and abundance worked. And I read some amazing books back then. And then I got involved in a school of metaphysics.
Oh, wow.
And as I dove into that and the spiritual exercises, I quit a corporate job I'd gotten. And I started to earn a living as a humorous illustrator, which I also have done. And I just started to shift my path, and which ultimately led me along a path that said, well, what's it like if I put my art and my spirituality together? Because those are the two most important things that I I resonate with in myself. And that unfolded a bigger path. It was like, and this is what we're going to talk about some today, is like following the breadcrumbs, following your intuition. And like I kept finding one more thing and one more thing. The more that I dove in spiritually into my intuition, the more it expanded with my art and symbolism and the way that my art became a channel and a conduit to be a messenger. So anyway, that's been, and when I started out in Oklahoma, it was very conservative.
Oh, yeah.
And I am very not conservative at this point.
Yeah.
I'm very universal. So it's been quite an interesting journey.
Wow, a lot of people can relate to that, you know,
Yeah.
And that was a very wonderful experience. And what can you elaborate more on your topic, on the sacred art wisdom and support from the divine to navigate in our modern times? Things have changed and they're going to constantly change, and people need to learn how to navigate with the changes, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oops. Sorry. Little ding in here. My computer's not all turned off. Okay. So, you know, one of the things that I've found is that as I dove into my art and it became a conduit for my spiritual experience, it was always a place of going within when I was younger. It was my meditation. It was what moved me into a place of peace. It moved me into my sanctuary place for my own soul self. And I find many artists most likely find that because it's a solitary practice. So it is a very good practice to lead into meditation. But when I began to put my art focus and my spiritual focus, I started to understand that it was the capacity to open a doorway to the divine, and that we have had sacred art for eons. I actually had an experience when I had a metaphysical store and I hadn't painted for 5 years. I went through a dark night of the soul. As I came back out of it, I had a wonderful artist come into my life, Strilo Sophia. She's on the West Coast. She's a beautiful spiritual artist. She saw some of my earlier work and she says, "Are you painting?" And I said, "Nah, I haven't been able to make myself do it. I've kind of been stuck." And she said, "I came for you." And she'd actually come for the opening of this metaphysical store that I owned with a friend. And so she got me painting again. And when it did, all these goddesses started to flood out of me. And I had been guided to do soul portraits back in the 90s when I asked how my art and spiritual practices come together. And I got this download. It actually kind of scared me. I had like 9 psychics working for me. And the last thing I wanted to do was to be in the hot seat at that point. I'm like, no, not me. I'm like, well, I think my guides kind of kicked my butt a little bit over that dark night of the soul. And so I'm like, okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
So part of the importance of the story is Mother Mary came to me during this time and downloaded a piece of art in the middle of the night. It was her, and she was emitting love through this portal of this painting. And she was transmitting this divination. She was transmitting the importance of sacred art to me to help me understand that my process, which is not only Katherine's process, it's a process for all spiritual artists who know that they're a messenger or a channel, is that it creates a vibrational shift for people to view it, to experience it. It brings healing. It brings upliftment. It refocuses us out of the chaos of our separate world that we're in, all this crazy that we're experiencing. And it brings us back to a focus of a higher vibration, of a heart-centered illumination. So it's always like whatever you put out in the world comes back to you. So it's like, what do you want to create as an artist? What do you want to connect to, and what's your message as part of that? So sacred art, sacred words, sacred song, it all can help shift our vibration and bring us back to heart. And I feel like we really need focal points right now to bring us back here, because whatever we focus on is going to expand. And if we keep staying out in the chaos, it's painful, and we're only going to create more chaos. So it's a tool. I literally take my artwork, not only sell the originals and do soul portraits for individuals, but I also create altar cards and other imagery that people can work with and learn how to bring that into their everyday focus and call upon these angels, guides, ascended masters to know that they're not alone. So it can be multifunctional,
Okay.
sacred art.
Yeah, because some people just look at it as one way. I mean, you're looking at it as more, as a faucet of multiple ways of using your gifts and abilities. I think this is a good message. No matter what artist you are, you can utilize that gift to make a living. And a lot of people I know, there are some people, not all people. There's a lot of artists I know that do very well. And there's some artists that struggle financially, trying to make a living with what they have. But I feel the creative side, tapping into it, you do it this way in your painting, but you can also utilize it in another faucet, another,
Absolutely.
And listening to you, it sounds like you let it come many ways to you. It wasn't like just one way. And I think that is that's a good message for anybody, even if it's art or not. That you can be very creative with what you have. Yeah, and I think that's a very, 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 very good message. And some of the people, you also are an illustrator. Did you say you illustrate?
I've done humorous illustrations in the past. I mostly paint and use my artwork. As a conduit for people to connect to the divine. And so It's in my books. The book that you showed earlier, Artist Shaman Healer Sage, it's a full color spiritual guidebook that has over 70 paintings in it that are there not only to illustrate, but they're there to raise the frequency that can be also focal points for people to do open-eyed gazing meditations if they want. They have energy and vibration along with the words and the way that was created. So it's a vibrational tool, let alone as one you can take in through your intellect, but also to connect to the imagery to inspire and uplift and to bring in information, energetic packets of information vibrationally. So it's kind of like how I work it's like everything seems to be a vibrational tool in the way that I work now. And I encourage artists and everyone I think is a creative being. It's just if we get really linear in this reasoning world that we're actually is breaking down right now, as we've come into the Aquarian age and trying to regain our divine feminine, our creativity, is that anything is possible when we start tapping in, and that art, song, dance, any form of creativity, cooking, anything, creative thinking, absolutely can change everything about our reality. And that we've got great opportunities right now if we'll go into possibility and wonderment. That's one of the things that I like to work with is, well, what if it got better, and lean into that and see what the universe wants to give us back.
Oh, I think that's wonderful. That's a really good thought for everyone who's watching to really, really let that sink in, is that all things are possible. They really are. And I know we all have been going through change, and some of us very drastic change, from the way we've done things, we're being asked to do them in a new way. Some of us are. And I know it had been for myself as well, as being an international channel, traveled 18 years throughout all over Vancouver, throughout the US, and COVID hits, we all go through this change. So I can relate to everything you're saying. And then it was like, okay, you're not going to do it that way. You're still going to travel, but it's going to be very selective, and I would be gone from May until November, which I enjoyed and loved all the connections, but the change was adding a new, different faucets, which you were talking about. And this was new for me, stepping into a new level of empowerment and a new level of, putting the expos together. I can see what you're saying. So it's very being creative to add upon what you've done. Everything is a totality to where you are, and then do the podcast and have a platform for people. But one thing, and the other thing I got was, other things. So we're all going through this change. This was new for me to go under this change. It's like, okay, but I love it. And just like you're saying, it's being creative and letting it come many facet ways. But I also know that a lot of I love all creative. We're all creative, as you're saying. But I also get that I love art. I don't draw, in that way, but I get the visions of them. But I really appreciate people who do art. And I've always loved going and seeing all the art stuff and their gifts and abilities. But you also do portraits. Can you elaborate a little bit more? How do you do that? I mean, is this like a face you do? Or I remember saying, you were mentioning something about is this a portrait that you create, or is it a symbol that you make?
It's an entire portrait. It's a soul portrait. So the download I got back in the 90s was to help others to see themselves beyond their human flesh, to get to their soul essence, to help them remember all of their bigger self, their I am presence, their beauty, their love, their light. Yes. The way it downloads is very energetic. And it's not always just the face of you sitting there as you are at this point in your human existence. You may have purple skin. You may have energy coming in your crown. You may have symbol on your third eye, or wings coming from you, or big heart symbols. So I work a lot with symbology, color, and frequency. I sense the color. It's not an aura painting. It's an energetic reflection of going in through the doorway of your multidimensional self to give you a portal. It's a living painting that is to help that you can do ancient. I teach people that you can do ancient open-eyed gazing meditations to help them move into this aspect of themselves and connect that we're so much bigger than what we experience as human most of the time. And so it's a tool as well as a healing experience. Oftentimes people cry, their heart's open. They're so happy because someone can see them beyond just their human. And so it's a healing and soul retrieval type of experience for someone. Sometimes past lives come up. I remember having an experience of painting a friend of mine who was the assistant director of art therapy at Naropa Institute a number of years ago. She's like a 40-year-old white woman with blonde hair from the South and with a nice Southern accent. All I could paint was this, looked like a llama. It looked like this Tibetan person there. And I'm like, oh my God, my personality at the point was like, oh, wait, it doesn't look anything like her. And it's like, my guides were like, silly person, this is more of her soul than what she looks like in human form. You need to so it morphed into more of what she looked like at that current time. Wow. But it was like this underpinning of this layer of her soul that wanted to be seen as this monk essence that wanted to come forward and to weave that into her present time self. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And when I'm hearing you, I just feel the love around it, and I feel a healing. I feel like a healing with that person or people at some level, but also I see a vibration that's higher that also raises them higher. So it feels like it's a remembrance to that at the same time. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I happen to have a spirit guide painting sitting next to me. That's a commission. Do you want me to show it real quick?
Yes.
It's not a soul portrait, but it's similar.
Absolutely.
I'm like, oh yeah, why is this in this room right now? So this is one.
It's beautiful. There you go. I can see it. Oh my goodness.
So this is kind of close up because it's a bigger painting, but these are the type of symbols that are in soul portraits and spirit guide paintings. This one is, this guy's name is the Holy One that came in for one of my clients and is bringing healing and support for him. But it wanted to come through a spirit guide, one of his spirit guides.
Wow, that's fascinating. That is beautiful.
Yeah, so it's pretty fun.
So colorful, and so vibrant and so bright. I think it's just wonderful. That is amazing. Like I said, I really always had a heart for artists. I'm sure it's past lives too. But I just love watching and seeing it and the colors and their gifts. Everybody has the unique gifts and what they offer, but you have some very distinguished gifts here. Mastered them over the years or have grown from them, Yeah,
it's very interesting because my typical sessions with an individual are an hour and they get a 16 by 20 channeled painting and guidance that comes through. And it's amazing what can happen in that period of time. It's like we go outside of linear time and all this magic starts dropping in for that person.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
so it's pretty fun.
I'd love to have you at our expo. You're amazing. I mean, you're just you're there. You know, you're aware, you're there, and you're so filled with love and such a high frequency, which is amazing. But you have a lot of gifts. But my question is, what are some of the tools people can use to help them live with the changing times? I mean, is it grounding? I know you kept saying go back to the heart center. I think that's a really good thing to remember, you know, because there's so much being pulled, you know?
Yeah. And it takes a lot of practice. So finding some practices that help you ground and center are important.
Okay.
You know, if you can get outside, it's going to be one of the most important things is to go outside, take your shoes off, put them into the beach, into the dirt, literally go hug a tree. And if you have a safe place where you're not around a ton of people, if you can go lay flat, face first on the earth, and imagine connecting your heart to the heart of Mother Earth, it's amazing because getting out in nature, there's literally a high frequency of energy that comes through your aura, through your energy bodies, and begins to clean off all the struggle, anything that's not harmonious. And it's literally a place of reset. If you can't get outside, a sea salt bath is an incredible experience to just put a couple of pounds, literally, of bulk sea salt into the water like you're getting in the ocean.
Right.
But it'll clean your etheric field. And it's going to be a reset energetically through your field to help you navigate. The other thing is finding quiet times where you get still for 5-10 minutes at a time with all the devices and electronics and everything in the external world. We get pretty distracted as a species right now.
Right.
And, you know, step away from the news. You don't need to be ignorant, but don't keep bombarding yourself with all the fear, because that's creating more fear in your body. And your body's an animal. It's our first relationship is this animal body. So we need to take care of it and create as much harmonious spaces as possible. So for those of you, whether you think you're creative or not, you know, do your best to get quiet when you can, and then listen to the stories you're telling yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Are they positive stories? Are they negative storylines that just keep taking you down into fear? Can you sit and do some exercises of, well, what would it be like if it got better? It's what if I felt better about myself? What if I was healthier? What if I made better choices? Just those little bit of conversations can start shifting things when you notice where your focus is. That's why meditation or stillness practices, mindfulness practices are important, because we often don't even know the negative stories that we're running. So it's simple, but it's not easy.
Oh, absolutely. And we have a couple of questions. So we want to go some with the questions. And one of the questions I had, these are from Florida. What is the significance of the Lion's Portal? This is the week where it's really intense right now.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because we are 8/8 is direct, and that's today, which is pretty cool. Yes. And it's actually an alignment that starts on July 26th and goes through about August 12th, even though August 8th is direct, and it's when the sun is in Leo.
Okay.
And it aligns directly with the planet or the star Sirius and the Earth. And so there, and Orion's belt. So there's an alignment that happens. Okay. It's like the energy of Jupiter. It's literally a very expansive light energy. And Sirius is actually considered like the soul of our sun. It is like this massive light frequency and an activation coming to Earth. So we're being bathed in these high frequency energies right now that create greater abundance. So right now, like focusing on what you truly desire helps you to manifest and create what you want. So it goes back to ancient Egyptian times too, when the Nile would flood and bring great abundance and the people would be so blessed. So right now it's a good time to count our blessings and to focus on what's expanding, because we're in a cosmic light show, basically. We're being bathed.
Absolutely. It's awesome. And thank you. And the second question I have from Florida is, how can I monetize my art and expression? We did a little bit that in your in your talk today. But can you elaborate a little bit more about that, how a person can monetize it a little bit more? I know we covered some of that.
I personally like the idea of connecting to the value of what it gives others.
Oh, the value.
What is your value of not only creating your art, what's the blessing that it has for others? If you can connect to the idea of the value and the blessing that everything that you create with your art, that it's going to give a blessing to someone else, then you're going to start seeing reciprocity. You're going to see what you give is going to come back to you. So if you just make a piece of art and you can't find the value in it in others, you're probably going to kind of sit dead in the water. So think about, why do you create what you create? What is it that it gives to you? And how does that bless another? Just to love your art. I remember being in a studio many years ago, and there were artists who would just struggle to like what they do. And I thought, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
So find the joy and the beauty in your art, and then that's going to translate. We've got so many ways, outlets now. We've got digital media.
Yes.
We've got, I make altar cards. I do poster prints. They're low cost. You can go to fine art prints. You can be an illustrator for books or book covers. There's many different outlets. So pay attention to what you like with other artists who are successful. Go on my website at KatherineSkaggs.com and see, does anything resonate with you that I'm doing? I mean, I've got books, I've got card decks. I've followed an artist in Gainesville for a while, Sarah Whitmire, and she's got very different art. It's very cool. And she's been doing these channel downloads for years that she's done on YouTube. Well, I finally see she has a card deck out. So there's many different ways. But think about, what does your art communicate, and how does that connect to others? Who's your audience? How does your heart connect to theirs? I'm very much about heart, if at all possible. It's not an intellectual or a money thing. It's a value thing.
Yes, it is. Absolutely, it is. That is a great advice. That, I think everyone will get something out of that one, out of all the questions or advice you're giving. But that, I think the value, that piece needs to be in there. A lot of them don't value. That's really important. And this is a question I got. How can I live more authentically in these times? This is from a Florida person.
Well, I think this is a great exercise, is to maybe do some journaling. What are you happy with in your life right now? What are you not happy with in your life right now? How can you get honest about what feeds your heart? And if you're doing things that don't feed your heart, you may need to be really clear that you need to make some changes. If you want to be authentic, you need to be honest with yourself about what really thrills you, gives you joy. Are the people around you resonating with you? Are you harmonious with the way you dress, with the way you act, the way you speak? What thrills you? And sometimes it takes some big effort or courage to love yourself enough to know that sometimes you need to just make a step in another direction. And that direction is to fill your heart up that
with what you love.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
It's not, sometimes it's not easy, but it's like the more we can love ourselves, the more we'll choose better.
Yes. And the more you're being more authentic and honest with yourself, it starts there. So you have really good advice, And next question I have is, how can I align and ground better? So people are having a hard time grounding, even though they know how to ground. The energies are coming in more intense.
There's so many things. What I mentioned earlier about going outside is one of them. Cleaning out and reconnecting. I feel like these frequencies, we kind of get slimed sometimes. And for all of us intuitives here, empaths, we're feeling the mass consciousness that is unsettled, some trauma, a lot of fright and fear that's running in the field. So I'd say take a shower, put essential oils on. It seems simple, but it's like, imagine that you're clearing your whole field.
Exactly.
I can lay in bed and ground all day long too, and not always have to go outside. I like to do a visualization where I drop and I do this a lot with my clients. I drop a giant grounding cord like I'm a tree all the way into the center of the earth. Now, one of the things in shamanism that I do, that I encourage with others, and others do it that maybe not call it shamanic, but I call them my guides, angels, and helpers. And Mother Earth is a great ally. So we talk about allies. We talk about these important relationships of powers that are greater than what we might be able to experience in our own physical bodies. So I'm like saying, hello, Mother Earth. I'm sending my cord right down into her center. I'm imagining that I'm connecting with her womb space. And just like she takes our carbon dioxide and gives us oxygen, she imagined that as you ground down, that there's a place where she sucks off any discordant energy, anything that's not harmonious. And at the same time, she's giving life force up that right into your root. And I bring it all the way up. And then I imagine out my crown, out into the heavens or into the source of all creation, connecting to that light. And then I'm being cleaned there. And then it's an infinite flow of light returning. And I run that energy from earth through me to heaven, back at like an infinite flow. That's just like a vacuum cleaner and a filling up. I'm going to the filling station. And it doesn't take long once you practice it, but it can bring you in the center. I imagine that I like to say that each of us is the child of heaven and earth, that we are the conduit, and that if we will practice, and once you get good at it, you can be driving down the road, be very clear and conscious, and you can be resetting your energy field. That's one way.
Wow. I like the way you explained it and the visualization. It lets people understand the importance of it, and not just grounding, but the way you described it. I think gives it more understanding for people, and the reason why it's important. I like how you added that. That was really nice. Thank you. And we have one more question, and it's from Beth Perry from Michigan. And her questions are there symbols that we should watch for, them that will help guide us on our path?
You bet. A great question, because when you become curious about what your signs and symbols are, they start appearing to you. And I remember some of the first ones I used to see when I started to recognize I was connected to Archangel Michael. He was one of my guides a long time ago, was when I started to become aware of that, was that I would find pennies on the ground when I'd start asking for help. And then I found bigger denominations. I'm like, oh, thanks. I appreciate that. So a lot of times people will feel like either their loved ones who are on the other side or their angels will leave them a penny or a dime or a nickel. It may be significant. The other thing is feathers. I always find that when I'm going walking, when I find feathers on the ground, I know that someone's speaking to me from heaven, whether it be a red-tailed hawk or an owl or a raven. I get into working with totem animals and looking at signs and symbols is that animals, birds, they'll often leave you a message. And even if you don't know what the message is intellectually, it's like, oh, thank you. I know somebody is trying to get my attention. So literally, when I started in my shamanic path 17 years ago, I remember I walked my dog on the trail here in Colorado in the foothills, and we came across this big 5-foot snake. And I'm like, okay, it's time to turn around and go home now. And so snake is a symbol of shedding one's skin. Snake is a symbol of change. It's also a symbol of new beginnings. It's a fertility symbol of the goddess. And so I head back home, and I had an errand to run. We got in the car, and I headed down to the end of the street, and I'm waiting for the stop sign. I mean, the cars to go by. I see a big old truck go by, and guess what it has on it? It has some cobra snakes on it. It was a U-Haul truck. And I'm like, okay, I'm paying attention. There's a snake on the trail. There's a snake on that truck. Signs and symbols will appear both in the natural world and in the human construct They'll show up in our dream states. When you become curious about something, the universe has to give you a sign or symbol. And so when you start asking about signs and symbols, they can come in many forms. My artwork is filled with symbology. So you might want to get a book on symbols. You might want to get a book on totem animals. Or you might just simply go, well, look at those two ducks in the street. Wonder what they're trying to tell me today. But just sit with the feeling of it and go transcend transcend the intellect when you can and touch into what it feels like. And the message will start to explain itself, in my experience.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
It was a great question.
Yeah, it really was. And what I'd like you to do is, can you elaborate? We're going to bring your books up, and she's got amazing. I mean, she is really an award-winning author and amazing. You got to see her books. And so if you want to get a hold of her books, or you can purchase her books, we're going to talk about how people can get a hold of her after we're done showing her products. So we're going to show a few of hers. And can you tell us a little bit more about this particular book?
Yeah, Artist Shaman Healer Sage is a culmination of teachings for the last 35 years. It began with my metaphysical teachings and universal laws and truths that I studied. And then 17 years ago, I happened upon the shamanic path. And my teachers, Jose and Lena Stevens, down at the Power Path School of Shamanism, I stumbled into when I was looking actually for Sandra Ingerman, who's an amazing shamanic teacher. And I experienced a 4-day shamanic healing retreat in New Mexico, but there were also 2 shamans from Peru. And so I had this great experience, which just led me to the next piece, to study the medicine wheel, to do a 2-year advanced shamanic program internationally, where I got to work with shamans in Peru as well, both in the Andes and on the Amazon River, as well as in Mexico. And it's a multicultural approach, plus my teachers in New Mexico. And so once I started this program, because I am a teacher, I'm just like, I have to bring this home and teach it. But the part of the Artist Shaman Healer Sage, I'm not here to teach anyone to be a shaman. I feel like that's for people who grow up in these shamanic cultures. This is about how to bring practices of your imagination, recognizing that you can be the artist and the writer and the director of your life, the producer. And these principles that help you live a more harmonious life, to awaken the one who can see beyond this physical reality, to awaken the healer within, to awaken the wise one through these ancient practices and traditions that have been around and shared culture to culture. But it's kind of cool because you've got Siberian shamanism, Native American shamanism, South American shamanism, and they all tell you the same thing, even if they never met. So it's like this universal principles and how to bring ritual and altar work into your life. So I'd been asked for years, I taught this class starting back in 2011, and I've been asked for years where I'd travel if I had a book on it. And so finally I gave birth to the book in 2021, and Satyama Publishing picked me up, and Karen Stu, thank you. She's the owner of Satyama Publishing. So she got it out in the world, and it won 12 awards last year internationally.
Wow.
It's a beautiful book, but it's really kind of like a spiritual Bible of sorts. So you can get that at satyamapublishing.com, on amazon.com, and you can check my website out, katherineskaggs.com. And I'm sure it's going to be at a lot of local spiritual, metaphysical stores, hopefully.
Oh, absolutely. Wow. Thank you. This is amazing. We're going to go to the next picture.
All right.
And are these oracles or tarot?
That's my oracle deck I just released last year. Okay. And the Master's Light Wisdom Oracle is 44 cards that has ascended masters, archangels, and other divine beings, celestial beings that I've channeled in. And they kind of had the Harry Potter sorting hat about who went in here, because I don't have all the ascended masters. I don't have all the archangels. It was like this particular assortment. Want to bring messages of wisdom and light to help people wake up on the path, and also gain guidance and understand how to become more empowered. It got a bronze award this year for Oracle decks at the COVR Awards, but it is very cool. It got the Industry Choice Visionary Award at the COVR Awards this year, meaning all the stores and the people in the industry chose this as top dog, so to speak. So again, Satyama Publishing, you can get it at the same place online that I mentioned before for the book. But it's a dear love of mine because it's actually got paintings and images that go back for the last 20 years that culminated. And we're about to talk about my tarot deck that I did with Sage Holloway. She's passed over now, but I was there as she was preparing to pass. I was one of her death doulas. I had the honor to be there the last few months of her life. And I said, we still have projects to do, Sage. She says, I know. I said, so when you're on the other side, you're going to help me with the Ascended Masters deck, aren't you? She says, of course I am. So I know that not only have the Masters come in, but a dear wise woman who was on this side of the veil for many years with me to create this next project that we're going to show you, but that she helped. And I just want to honor that we have many helpers who come in. And that's part of what this Oracle deck is about, is to help us connect to these other heavenly beings and bring them forward in our life that we can make them tangible.
Absolutely. Thank you. We have one more, and I'm going to bring this one up. And this I know is a tarot deck. It says it right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this deck was birthed in 2008 with Sage Holloway, who I was just mentioning. It's been a best-selling and award-winning deck for many years now, and it's honoring the divine feminine. It brings the goddess together with the symbology of the tarot. And I have to talk about Sage. She grew up in LA, and she began to vision or work with the tarot at age 14 as this hippie girl back in the late 50s, early 60s. And by the time she was 17, she knew she was going to create a divine feminine tarot deck to bring it forward into the Aquarian age. And so we met in 1991, and she says, I think you're the artist. I'm like, great. But it took us 15 years for me to get the full on message.
Oh, yeah.
And it's pretty awesome that this deck was created and culminated. So there's 22 goddesses for the major arcana, and all the lower arcana are the elementals. We took it back to the elements to help everyone know that you can be the one who divines wisdom and not that somebody else has to tell you. So this is helpful in that way too.
Absolutely. It felt really empowering. And what I'm going to do is just come up here real quick. And we have Mylene is here. Hi. We'll be traveling this year to the USA. That's all I got, a little word to it. That's all I got. But how can people get a hold of you, Katherine? This has just been such a wonderful conversation with you, and we're so blessed to have you. And I want to take a few minutes to thank Karen Stroth, Satyama Publishing Company. I met her years ago, and I'm so happy everybody's connected in this little hub here and other areas as well. And how can people, what do you offer, and how can people get a hold of you? And how can they
not only my products that you can get online, like I mentioned, at Satyama Publishing, Amazon, and actually he's going to be in Barnes & Noble soon, I understand, as well as my website. So at KatherineSkaggs.com, you can peruse all my offerings. So I do soul portraits, spirit guide paintings. You don't have to be in person with me. I do them through Zoom and long distance. I've shipped them all over the world. I also happy to do them in person if you're nearby when I'm in my studio. I do shamanic healing sessions. So I help do soul retrieval and help people clear their fields. I actually just had a client in Australia yesterday. That was pretty cool. And I said, how'd you find out about me? He says, online. You were the one. I'm like, cool. All right. So I can work with anyone around the world, apparently, if you can get on Zoom. And I teach classes, Artist Shaman Healer Sage. I'm about to launch some online classes through Satyama Publishing's new offerings that are going to be coming out this fall. And I do a lot of things, but those are a couple of things that I do that you can find at KatherineSkaggs.com. And I'm always happy to support people if there's something that I'm wise enough to do to help you.
Thank you so much. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us and for watching us. And if you want to know more about Kathleen too, and you kind of didn't catch everything, you can go to our website, www.sherrylord.com, SHERRYLORD, and for upcoming guests. And if you want to be a guest on our show, the information is there. I just want to give another thanks to you and to Satyama. Thank you so much, Katherine.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.